I had a perfect pregnancy. I saw a specialist every week, though, because I was an elderly prima gravida, which is a sweet way of saying they felt I was too old to be carrying my first child. I saw a maternal and fetal specialist. Every week I got an ultrasound, and every week the doctor and nurses would gather around the ultrasound and look at the baby and say, "What a perfect baby. This is a miracle at your age." I spent 9 months wondering what this was going to be like, what was it going to be like to give birth, what was it going to be like to see this person I'd been growing all this time, especially what was that rush of love that new mothers talk about, what was that going to be like? And of course, being a stand-up comedian, I relished the new market that motherhood was going to thrust me into. But most of all, the thought of leaving the house one day as us and coming home as a family just filled me with wonder. When the time came, they told us to prepare for a very long labor, but no, I pushed for 20 minutes. And Lucia Esperanza was born at 10:59 p.m. that evening on 11/10/11, not 11/11/11, the birthday that we hoped for, the perfect birthday, just to let us know that she would do things when she wanted to. So they put her on my chest, and I soaked in this little person I'd been carrying around. And I saw her little chin and her heart-shaped mouth, her button nose, and her folded ears. And I saw her almond eyes, and my heart stopped. And I asked Jamie, "Does she look like she has Down syndrome?" And Jamie said, "No." And I didn't feel a rush of love. I felt a wave of fear and anxiety. They brought us to our recovery room, and they took the baby to do some routine tests, and Jamie went downstairs to get everyone. And it felt like I was alone for hours. And my worry turned to fear, and my fear turned to panic. And I finally rang for the nurse, hysterical. And I was like, "Why is it taking so long? Is there something wrong? What is wrong with my baby? Can I have her back? Can you bring her back to me?" She brought back the baby, and I called Jamie sobbing, and I asked him to please keep everybody away just for a few more minutes while the nurse helped me calm down. And then everyone came in, 15 people came in to meet her, and they said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Wonderful," but I was terrified. Next day, the pediatrician came in our room, and he said, "Congratulations, your baby is perfect." It was such a relief I could breathe again. He said her APGAR score was great, and her hearing was fine, and she had 10 fingers and 10 toes, and he suspected that she had Down syndrome. And he gave us a packet with a number on a Post-it note on top for us to call. And as he was leaving, he said, "Now is the time to have these babies." What with all the research? I mean, some of them even read now. We spent our days in the hospital in the room with the door closed and the shades pulled. And at night, Jamie got in the single bed with me, behind me, and he held me really tight. I think he held me so tight so I wouldn't fall out of the bed from crying so hard. It was confirmed. She had trisomy 21, which is 3 copies of her 21st chromosome instead of 2. And that first few weeks is just a blur of tears and forms and doctor's appointments and lists I made of all the things that were never going to happen now and all the things that she would never do. I slept on a couch with her for months with her skin on my skin so she could feel loved. But every time I looked at her, all I thought is, where is my baby? Whose baby is this? When do I get to see my baby? Sorry. Jamie went back to work, and I was a wreck. I begged him to please let me change her name. Esperanza was my grandmother's name, and Lucia was just a cute reason to call her Lulu. But I didn't call her Lucia, I didn't call her Lulu, I didn't call her anything because she wasn't my baby. It made him so, so sad, but he said, "Just give it some time. She's our Lulu, just give it some time." But I was a wreck. I was pining all the time for the little family that I thought we'd have, that I dreamed of, for the home that I thought we'd have. And I hated the place we lived now. filled with all the baby shower gifts and the strollers and the bassinets and all the stuffed animals, the things that used to make me daydream and smile, but now just wrenched my gut. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to go on, but I went on. I felt guilty when I looked at the shower presents. I felt like somehow we had deceived our friends and family, and that I should return all the gifts and apologize to everyone. I felt deeply, deeply ashamed that I wanted a baby at my age. The pre-screenings showed no signs of Down syndrome. None of the ultrasounds showed any sign of Down syndrome. And the tests come with the risk of miscarriage. And I already had 2 miscarriages after the age of 40. I was terrified to have another miscarriage and maybe never have a baby. So Jamie and I told each other that no matter what, this was our baby, and we were going to have her, and it would be fine. But now I knew that for me, at least, that was not true. And I'd lay in bed at night with my stomach in knots, and the broken record playing in my head. I cannot do this. I am not supposed to be this kind of mother. I am not cut out to be this kind of mother. But I knew that no matter whose baby we had, she had to be cared for. She had to be raised. It wasn't her fault I felt the way I did. She didn't deserve to suffer for it. And Robot Bethany kicked in. I went to every conference, every workshop, every lecture about Down syndrome. I read so many books. And I would go with an armful of my books filled with neon tabs to every specialist appointment, and I'd ask 100 questions. I got every service I could get from early intervention. At 3 months old, she had a massage therapist. She was fancier than me. At night, I'd watch YouTube videos of children with Down syndrome reciting the alphabet or playing guitar or driving a car until I fell asleep. I learned what sorts of activities could benefit children with Down syndrome, and I took her to everything. I took her to music classes, I took her to swim classes, I took her to the museum, to play groups. I joined a mom group. As a rule, I never talked about Down syndrome, just the things that new moms talk about. But one time I was feeling bold, and I started to talk about the particular concerns that my family had. And one mom said to me, "But don't you want her to be with her own kind?" And I thought of Jim Crow, and I thought how separate is never equal, and only equal is equal. And I told that mom, she's a child. This is her own kind. But I learned to never talk about what I was feeling again. I never talked about how scared and lonely I was. I never talked about how I ached. I never talked about how much I hated Down syndrome. I never talked about how ashamed I felt about that. At the time, I was still performing. When I was pregnant, there was a burgeoning market for mom comedy, so I just kept writing about new mom things, never about what my personal challenges were. And I landed an audition for a mom comedy in Los Angeles. I went. The audition was fine. And as I was walking out, I heard the other mom comics having a conversation. One said, "I mean, you know my kid's a little retarded, right?" And they all laughed. And she said, "I mean, you've seen her, right? You have to admit she's a little bit downsy." My heart broke into a million pieces. But I didn't put them in their place. I made an excuse. I said, sometimes comedians say really nasty things. Like that time a comedian said to me, "Aren't you too old to be pregnant? Isn't your baby going to be retarded?" Back at home, my loneliness consumed me, and it turned to anger at family members who lived a mile away from me but were never around, at friends who disappeared, at friends who were there but acted as if everything was fine. I was angry at anyone who had a typical child or a typical baby or anybody who was pregnant and joyful. I was completely hopeless. Doing the right thing for the baby was my only motivation, and I went from activity to activity like a zombie. I felt that I couldn't be the mother that she needed me to be and be a good wife to Jamie, and I told him that I wished I could move out. But really, I wished I would just die. Then some friends invited us to vacation with them in Key West with friends of theirs. It was all couples with no children. And I was very worried about being the one to bring the kid to the party, especially our child. I didn't know what they'd heard about her. I didn't know what they would think of her. I had no idea what to expect. I walked in the door, and they had a gift for her. They had a little book about vacations. I'm not here. They all tried to play with her, but she's a little shy. She's afraid of strangers, so she cried. When night came, we put her to bed, and the Jameson came out, and we started telling stories about ourselves and laughing and talking. And I gravitated to one woman in particular for some reason. And over the course of 7 days, I told her everything. I told her how I was afraid that I wasn't doing enough for her and that I would never be able to do enough for her. And I was afraid that we could never travel again and that she wouldn't love the beach the way I love the beach. And I was afraid that she would never appreciate the things that we do for her and how ashamed I was about that feeling. She didn't judge me. She didn't say, well, at least, or it could be worse. She just listened. And she did point out that actually we had traveled. We were in Key West. And that it was on the beach, and Lulu was loving the beach. And she said that things were going to be however they were going to be, because of us and in spite of us. And that was such a relief to hear her say. She lifted a weight off my soul. And on the last day, Lulu played with everyone. She threw her beach ball, and they'd catch it, and everyone would cheer. They said this was the best day of the vacation. And I'd watched them get to know Lulu, and I got to see her through their eyes. She was hilarious. She was fun, she was warm, she's smart, and she definitely did things when she wanted to. She was our Lulu, our light and our hope. And when I returned home, I didn't see anymore the faces of the people who weren't there. I saw the faces of the people who were there and who wanted to be there. And when we got to talking, it turns out that none of us knew what to say or how to say it. But now they listened, and now they said that they loved our perfect little family. And they thanked us for showing them the way by just treating her as a child, because that's what she is. And once I stopped fearing being this kind of mom, I realized that all moms cry a lot. All moms doubt their ability to raise this child. All moms worry about the future. I used to wish I could go back in time and get that test after all, but now I wish I could go back in time and allow myself to feel the joy that a new mother feels, because that's what I was. Thank you. Thank you. It's a lot easier to talk about this stuff now. Now, if somebody asked me if I was shocked when she was born, I say, of course I was shocked. I never expected a daughter of mine to have straight blonde hair. I definitely thought she'd be rocking the Afro puffs. We still go to our music classes, and we still go to our play groups in the museums, all with typical kids, but not so that people might see her that way. We go to our special places just for kids with Down syndrome. And after our long days filled with fun, we come back to the apartment. And when I put my key in the door, Lulu always says, "Home, Mama." And I say, "Yes, Lulu, we are home." Thank you.